Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to Drawing Down the Stars. I'm Snappy, and I'm here today with Graham. How's it going, Graham?
Oh, I'm all right, thanks. How are you?
Wonderful. So, we're here today to talk about the new chapbook that you're releasing that's going to be all about it's like a series of short stories and a couple plays that you wrote, right?
Yeah, it's a collection of short prose, mostly prose fiction segments, and then there's a one-act play at the end.
Yeah, and it's called You Only Live Once. It has
Right.
quite
You
the
only die
provocative,
once. So,
sorry, You Only Die Once, sorry. And it has quite the provocative cover here. So,
yeah.
what? Why don't you tell us a little bit about the story of this book, what inspired you to write it, how it came to be, and then let's talk about this image since it's such a terrifying kind of image for many of us. So, also just a trigger warning. Of course, there will be talk of mental health and everything. For those of you who are new, Graham is a artist and poet who often focuses on mental health and does mental health advocacy. So just be aware.
Yes. So this project was started back in 2013. It was a much larger text, and I had a series of prose stories, and then interspersed were like these poems that were telling the story of like a different character's perspective. And I got very frustrated with it. I just couldn't get it to a point where I was happy with it, so I shelved it for about just over 10, almost 10 years. And
Wow.
and then at the start of 2023, I decided to look back over the texts and I said, not all of this is bad. There's actually some stuff in here that I like. So I went through it again and I picked out the pieces that resonated the most with me and decided to put them into a short chapbook.
Did you write any new material for this book at all, or?
There is one new piece for it called the Decay that I'll read at some point, and that is a newer piece, and it sort of was designed to be an adjunct to the short play.
That's so cool. Interesting, right? So these are all unreleased material that you've been sitting on for over a decade. Is there any kind of like cohesive theme to the work at all, or?
I mean, there's the general theme of mental health. The theme that the title "You Only Die Once." I realize now that that's more common of a saying than I thought. There's other books with that title, but it's something my mom said at the beginning of last year when we were talking about, I guess, the sacredness of life and the importance of protecting yourself in certain situations. And she's like, "Well, you only die once. Got to be careful."
Wow. Yeah. You know, that is a phrase I've heard before, but it's something I've always taken for granted. It is kind of a profound statement when you really think about it. This fact that death is a finality. It is an end to our personage, and it is something that we can all see looming upon the horizon. And it's such a defining aspect of what it is to be alive, right? Is to know death and to fear it. So wild stuff.
Thank you.
So, um, what like talk to us a bit about the cover and what inspired the cover.
Right. So this cover is a drawing that I made in 2021, and the title it's going to be in my art book that I'm working on, and it's titled "This Is Not How It Ends." That's the name of the drawing, and it's an implication. As you can see, there's a distance between the man and the noose, and he still hasn't decided to cross that distance yet. He's still in the act of contemplating. Maybe he's a bit reticent to follow through with it.
Right.
And maybe in that reticence, he'll turn away from it and leave it.
Right. This is that kind of suicide ideation, thinking about it, right? Being haunted by that image.
Exactly. Suicidal thoughts are something I've been struggling with since I was 8 years old, and I'm 35 now. So, 27 years of my life have been defined by this, or influenced by it, maybe not defined.
No,
So,
for sure. But it is something that's been a part of your life and a constant struggle for you.
exactly, exactly.
So tell us about this first piece here. Like, what is the context of this? Do you remember what this one was like? What inspired this piece? Or
Yeah, there's a bit of a complex theme behind it that I don't know if I can adequately put into words, but it is called The City of Glass and How We Built It. And it was the title of a poem from my anthology, The Shape of My Will. And it's a much older poem that I wrote around the same time as all these texts. And it is very much like, well, you'll find out when we read it. We can talk a little bit more about that. I think it's easier just to read the text. But it's a concept that's important to me, and it's a concept that I can't really adequately, completely define. In the poem titled "It" in my other collection, I say there are a million ways to describe it, but it cannot be named.
oh, right, interesting. So it's kind of like that being non-being idea almost.
Oh yeah, it's almost like my own take on Artaud's cruelty,
I see. All right.
or
Well,
inspired by that.
okay. Well, you might as well read the piece then. You have me absolutely intrigued.
Sure. So this is the city of glass and how we built it. Whilst they all had their faces glued to screens, my gaze was set on the world outside these seemingly seamless, transparent walls. They were not truly transparent, though. I was looking out the windows, but to everyone else, they might as well be walls, because they have accepted that since they are here, they cannot be there. And over time, a sad disillusionment befell them, which has convinced them that the windows are the same as walls. I could say, look, there's a whole world out there, and not a single person would break their gaze from the mesmerizing digital landscape at their fingertips, which they never have to leave. There was nothing for me in here. But is it better out there? A cemetery labyrinth of grid patterned tombstones carved entirely out of glass. When the clouds blanket the sky, I can laugh at all the animated corpses neatly boxed inside, frantically scrambling to finish a series of menial and superfluous tasks which they claim to be a life worth living. Now, though, a pale sun casts a glare, and those silicon mass graves then become monoliths of blinding light, reminding me scathingly, monumentally of my mortality. More than that, they carry to me stormy thoughts of it, how we all lended a hand in its creation, how collectively we hacked away at the world and ourselves and constructed it to protect us from our fear, how we failed to see that in this way its essence is our fear, and over time, with our own blood and flesh and souls, it was completed. Our darkest regrets and worries have been given a physical form, and it is a simulacrum that is more real than us, and we cannot destroy it because we are all too quick to point fingers at each other. And so we feed it, nurture it yet again with our flesh and our souls and our blood. And we turn our eyes blindly away, perpetuating the cycle. And that is but one of a plethora of methods in which it has defeated us. The sinking hole in our chests is its gaping maw, chewing on our hearts until we ache with despondency. It has separated us, and we are now driven to innovations and technologies to bring us closer together, but these have been proven to be a perfect example of its ability to continue to drive us away. In this city of glass huddled together in the darkness, which is cut only by the pale illumination of our screens, we have never felt so alone. It haunts each one of us with a different secret face that only we can see, and it whispers to us from empty corners and we wish that we knew nothing at all. Outside the city, I felt another digit in its iron and concrete grip. I yearned to return to nature, but I had been branded with the guilt of contributing to its sustenance. As such, I was cursed with the perspective of an outsider as I walked barefoot on the very soil from whence it came. This sentence could not be lifted until all traces of my contact with it had been eradicated. Until I had rattled my last breath, I could not relinquish its grip from me, so that nature can disassemble and reassemble me into something without consciousness, my humbling apotheosis for wishing to cast away the guilty stains of its taint. I had become withered, staggering and calling for help, but only the fractured echoes of my own voice answered me, and only its cold eyes met my gaze, and I desired to shatter this world in disdain.
Oh wow, that is some powerful stuff. Like, let's just go back to the beginning here.
Sure.
You know, you're setting up this whole idea about, I really love this dark imagery you have of all of these people kind of enslaved to their machines, to their screens. Because I think that we've all felt that at some point in our lives, especially now with the advent of cell phones. I mean, I remember feeling it as a child with the television or with computers, and it's just ramped up even more and more. And don't get me wrong, I love cellular technology, but it
Oh,
is all pervasive and terrifying in a sense, you know. And I feel this like you feel like things like TikTok and Facebook trying to constantly fight for your attention, you know. I'm like, I have other better things to read.
exactly. I go on YouTube and it's all these suggested videos that mean nothing to me. Maybe because I don't curate my algorithm, but
It's
you know,
hard to curate this stuff, right?
technology is a tool like anything else, and it can be used for good. It can be used for distraction as well, which is important sometimes. But we can become too distracted or too absorbed in our own little world, and then we sort of forget about everything else out there.
Right. We lose ourselves, right? There's a thinking hole in our chest. It's gaping maw, chewing on our hearts. That's some intense imagery down there. Like, wow. So I'm really starting to get an understanding. You're right. It really reminds me of the cruelty, you know, or it seemed, or like the nothing from. You remember that movie, The Never-Ending Story?
Yeah,
Right. It's that consuming chaos, that despair, that constantly separating force. Right. Saturnian
exactly.
magic energy.
And it's something that we often contribute to ourselves, often subconsciously without really realizing it.
Yeah. No. Right. Like so much. So often we're the ones who are feeling our own thoughts of destruction, and there's a certain reality, right? Like life is so difficult, right? And we're stuck here. We're absolutely stuck here. But even when it gets bad, you still have to continue forward, because the other option is worse, right? If you don't act, then you're doomed to suffer. But if you act, there's a potential to at least mitigate some of the suffering and experience pleasure as well. You know, it's such a
Exactly.
wild.
It's the choice between languishing and thriving, you know?
Yeah, and you have to kind of struggle against it and try, you know. And even the worst situations have that opportunity for transformation and for growth, you know. But it's still such a terrifying prospect, right? Life is like, ugh. And this is why we often create these its, because we're confronted by the absurdity and difficulty of this stuff, and then our thoughts just turn to darkness, right?
Exactly. Darkness and the cruelty that we instill upon ourselves, you know? When Artaud talked about cruelty in a letter in the theater and its double to one of his friends, he says, "When I speak of cruelty, I mean for myself first of all." And you know, I think that a lot of people can relate to that.
You know, it also makes me think, like, I remember reading the other day, there's a phenomenon, and I think we've all felt this at various times, where, you know, you're walking over a bridge, and then you just have this image of throwing yourself off it, you know, and it's such a terrifying and visceral experience, and you can't even help yourself, right? Like, there's this will to death with life, and there's this destructiveness. Like George Bataille talks about this kind of all the time, that Even like true art, right, is wasteful. It is this like it's
Yeah.
destructive by its very nature. It's superfluous and frivolous, and in that there's power, but it is also just, for the sake of it. And there's like something about this destructive behavior. Or you think about certain types of sex, especially like BDSM, or anything, or a lot of that thrill seeking behavior, or fighting. Yeah, life is wild.
It really is. There's so many forces at play constantly in our lives.
Well, that was a really good short little story there, Graham. I really enjoyed that, and
Thank
I really like your always this separating thing. You feel the staggering, calling for help.
you. Yeah, separate. The word is separated from itself.
Right. And this reminds me, like we were talking about the other week, like last Saturday, sorry, about Artaud. And Artaud, one of the texts you were reading, was constantly talking about how he gazed into the void, into that nothingness, and he just saw destruction, right? And then he chose and he went through it, but he rejects it and decides to project himself into life. I get a similar feeling with this. You got to kind of run from this it. That void isn't the positive thing that some people think it is, right?
Definitely not. We can learn from the void, but we can also get lost in it.
Right. Yeah, terrifying. All right, well, let's look at the next one here.
Sure. So this next one has a bit of a story behind it. It's a story within a story, and this is it's about a tale that my dad used to tell me when I was a child that had a profound effect on me, not really for the best.
Oh wow, the best kind of stories.
Yeah.
It makes
So
me
it
think.
starts off kind of dark, and then it gets into a bit of a juvenile story, and then the story takes some surprising turns.
Interesting. That makes me think, because I remember my dad. I had similar experiences. My dad would tell me joking kind of stories that were designed to scare, but then they actually did terrify me. Like I remember one time our house had like an earwig infestation in our old wooden fence, and it like terrified me. I was like, "Oh, these bugs are terrifying. They're so creepy." And then my dad comes up to me. He goes, "You know why they call them earwigs? Because they'll burrow into your brain and lay their eggs in there." And I'm like 5 or 6 years old. I like freaked out, and thought these things were gonna come after me. So then for like a day, I went on a crusade, like trying to clean up this infestation. Because I was like
Oh my
terrible.
god.
And then years later, I find out they're called earwigs because of ears of corn. It's like, of course, right?
Yeah.
Anyway,
But
I
it's
just
funny how those sorts of, what the parents think to be an innocuous or superfluous kind of comment can actually have such a profound effect on us.
and that's the thing, right? What's said in jest and just meant as humorous fun can often take on a whole new imaginative twist in the mind of a child. So this is a really interesting premise for a story. I'm excited to hear.
Thank you. So let's dive into it. This is the paramedic. When I was young, my father, when not in one of his dark moods, would tell me tales about paramedic Joe and his children. They were fantastical, strange, suspenseful tales that would always leave me wide eyed with wonder and excitement. No matter how bad things got, with the power of love and sharp intuition, paramedic Joe and his family always overcame any obstacles laid before them. He would always recite them from memory, and as a result, each time there were different colors and delivery to the story, I suppose depending on his emotional headspace at the time. Most of the tales I have forgotten, but there was one which stayed with me. Paramedic Joe has 3 children, Isaiah, Jimmy, and Zeke. One day a new boy comes to town. His name is Todd, and he is 6 years old. As such, he is in Jimmy's classes. Todd is extremely shy and wears particularly ratty clothes. After a couple weeks, Jimmy has a talk with his brothers. Listen, guys, there's something up with the new kid, Todd. What do you mean? Inquires Isaiah. I mean, think about it. He never talks to anyone. I've tried and he never responds, usually runs away. His clothes look like crud, and I've never seen him eat. Never, asks a shocked Zeke. Never. At snack times and lunchtime, he just sits there. After a pensive moment, Zeke speaks up. We should talk to Dad about this. Things might not be okay at home with Todd. After a long discussion, Paramedic Joe agrees that they should invite Todd over for a sleepover to show that they're friends and can be trusted. The next day, Jimmy once again approaches Todd. Hi. This time, Todd makes eye contact and even smiles. Hi, I'm Todd. His voice sounds oddly flat. I noticed you don't have a lunch. You can share mine. Sure, thank you. They sit and eat in silence for a few minutes. Jimmy invites Todd for a sleepover. That sounds like fun. Gee, I've never had a friend before. And so it was settled. They sit on a play structure and watch the other kids running and playing. The sun shines down, warming their smiling faces. New friends. That evening, Todd cycles over and rings the doorbell. Jimmy runs to the door and welcomes him in. Isaiah, Zeke, and Paramedic Joe all greet Todd in the foyer. How about you kids play while I make dinner? Sure, Dad. All four of them go outside, where a beautiful wooden play structure built by a family friend whose life has been saved by Paramedic Joe stands tall and proud amidst a grove of trees. The four children play a raucous game of tag. It goes on for an hour or so. As Todd is racing up the rope ladder on the play structure, though, he slips and falls about 15 feet. He lays curled up on the ground, clutching his wrist. Jimmy and his brothers rush to his side. Zeke, go get Dad. I think he's hurt. Zeke races to the house as quickly as possible, and out comes Paramedic Joe, bounding across the yard with a panicked look in his eyes. Todd is now sitting up, but refuses to take his hand away from his wrist. I'm fine, honestly. Paramedic Joe isn't convinced. He reaches out and gently moves Todd's hand away, and everyone gasps. Leaking from the wound in his wrist is not blood, but a fluid, slick and black like oil. Torn wires jut out at strange angles. It's okay, don't be alarmed. I am not human. I can be fixed. Please don't tell anyone. I just need to get home so my dad can fix me. Of course, stutters a still startled Paramedic Joe. Of course, we'll take you home and we won't tell a soul. Thank you. Inside the house, Paramedic Joe wraps Todd's wound with gauze and bandages to prevent more vital fluid from seeping out. They get in the car and drive for a very long time. After several hours outside the city and in the middle of a vast woods, they turn right down a beaten dirt path. It leads to a clearing with the most ramshackle house Paramedic Joe and his children have ever seen. They pull up to the front door. Thanks for everything, Todd shouts as he hops out and runs inside. The next day, Todd did not appear at school, not the next day either, nor the day after that. Paramedic Joe drove out to the house again, but it was all boarded up and somehow more decrepit looking than before, as if no one had lived there for decades. Todd was never seen again. This story comes to my mind often, especially when I am forced to be out in public, staring at strangers with abject horror, wondering if any of them, or even all of them, are robots, wondering if I'm a robot. Imagining phrase repeats in my head. None of them knew they were robots. 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 It is this mantra that wails in my ears. No, it is surely not the screaming of the man who I am shaking, demanding he prove he is human. I pull out my knife. He backs away, hands raised in an offering of peace. None of us are human. I can prove it. I roll up my sleeve. I can prove it. Sirens, shouts, hands pulling at me as I gouge the knife into flesh. Blood spilling out and everywhere. So much blood that I can't see the wires or veins. I need to know which, and before I can dig in my fingers to pluck them out, I am being dragged away into an ambulance, and paramedics are strapping me down, dressing my wound, vision blurring and blackening even as I scream. And that's the story. Sorry, just a second. I don't think I can hear you anymore.
Sorry, I had myself on mute. Sorry.
Oh, no problem. I thought it was my end.
Oh, yeah, that was incredible. I absolutely loved it. Great story. I love it that it's a story within a story. It was so much fun. And it's a great, interesting setup that it's this memory recall, and then the narrator kind of has a psychotic break. Interesting.
Mhm.
You can see where like this childish story about like, and the kid was a robot and disappeared, turns into this, well, what if I'm a robot? Everyone's a robot. I need to find the wires. Whoa. You see the
I was
imagination.
convinced, not convinced, but I was terrified of this for a large portion of my life. And kind of the point of the story, I guess, is that tales can inform us in ways that we don't expect. And when it comes to psychosis and mental health, these stories can fuel an entire fantasy world in our heads. And that can lead to ourselves getting hurt.
Right.
With psychosis, there's a statistic that the majority of people with psychosis are not violent. They are themselves the victims of violence, whether self-inflicted or from others. And that's really what I was trying to drive home here, that it was myself or the characters, the narrator's self being driven into this hell world that they live in,
No, I really feel it. And it's such a, that's a really profound thing, because often when you hear about these stories of violence involving people with mental illness, there is this kind of narrative that the person is able to retell, where there is a logic, but it is like a dream nightmare logic that has been
Mm-hmm.
instilled in them. And it's interesting to see the unfolding of this from this childish story, which is creepy, like the story your dad told you. But it is 10-year-old tell your son creepy. It's a very honest. It reminded me of remember here we used to have a show on like YTV, the youth channel here in Canada, called oh God, what was it? You'd have these like claymation like bugs, and I got a spooky story for you. It happened to a friend of mine.
Oh, yeah, it was called Creepy Stories.
Yes, yeah, right. Like it's something like that you would see on what Are You Afraid of the Dark or Goosebumps?
Yeah,
Just pushing it, right? But then it takes on a whole other level of one of these like it's also one of these kind of truisms, because I feel like one of the reasons why something like The Matrix or this or any of those stories about feeling like you're trapped, or we have identity issues, we all kind of feel that, right? We all have these moments. We can all relate to this person where maybe not to the extremity that they go to. We're not having psychotic breaks, but that feeling of just like maybe I'm fake or maybe the world's fake. I feel like everyone has kind of felt that, right?
yeah, I can't help but question the automatism of things, right?
Right. Especially as our technology ramps up even more and more and more and more and more.
Yeah, the lines will just become blurred, as we integrate technology into ourselves more and more.
Well, I'm just waiting for the shoe to drop now with like AI tech and photo manipulation and video and audio manipulation. I love listening to cheesy songs, and like you hear some of these audio remixes where it's like this person singing this song, and it's like, holy shit, you know? they can make these kind of people. They can make people say anything. So when it makes people doubt everything, it's crazy.
It does.
Anyway, sorry to rant.
The phrase in the story that I repeat, none of them knew they were robots. That's the name of a song by Mr. Bungle. I don't know if people are familiar with the artist Mr. Bungle, but they were an avant-garde. They're an avant-garde band that just genre hops constantly, and fronted by Mike Patton, who's one of my favorite vocalists.
Yeah, they're kind of all rock based, but very loosely. It's all about just kind of just intensity, and they're known for doing those big ups and big downs by playing something kind of playful like ska music, and then going into like grindcore, right?
Exactly. And when I first discovered them, I looked up the album Disco Volante, and none of them knew they were robots was the name of one of the songs, and that just like fueled these thoughts that I had that were buried in me from the story as a child. So I felt the need to incorporate that into the story.
Wow, love it. That was a fun story, Graham. Thank you. Wow.
Thank you. So now we come to the play. I'd like to read another story from the collection first to sort of tie things in, if that's okay.
Yes, please do.
It's quite short. It's called The Decay. We see it everywhere. A fallen tree in the forest, crawling with insects, a banana peel on the ground covered in mold. My father's receding gums and rotting teeth, the cancer slowly eating him from the inside, the sickly shade his skin had become, the steady deterioration of my mother's mind, the way she stopped going out at night. She stopped going out. The way she stared, wide-eyed with terror at me when I visited, as though I were a stranger in her home. She trusted no one but my father, only his skeletal hands, those same hands which once brought me nothing but anguish and shame, and hushed words, "Butterfly, come back to me," could calm her seething fits. At last she was taken away. I never had the heart to visit. It terrified me. You always chided me for not going, which made me feel awful. My dad went a couple times, I think, when he was well enough. Now he lays beneath the earth while she rots somewhere in her mind.
Oh, wow.
So that sort of sets up the main character of the play, which is the mother.
Okay. Wow. So dealing with cancer is such a terrifying image.
Cancer is terrifying, and the mother is suffering from, I never specify what, but some sort of degrading psychological condition.
Right. Just brought on by trauma and stress, I guess.
Very possibly. And so she has to be taken to a long-term care home. And that's the setting of the play, which is titled Then Just Ghosts, which is the last line of a song by the band Noctmistium. They were a psychedelic black metal band that focused a lot around addiction and mental health. And it was a line that struck me very deeply, you know, just ghosts. Like at the end of your life, everyone turns into a ghost, you know, you don't recognize them, everyone's dead to you, you're dead to yourself.
It's just shades, fading memories, right?
Exactly.
So we're going to read this together. I'm going to play all of the secondary characters. You're going to be the main woman, right?
Yeah, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
All right. So I'll read the stage directions as well. So scene 1, evening. Woman is sitting on a chair in a room. There are white walls, a bed, another chair by a small table, and a door stage left. Cold light comes from overhead. Woman is perpetually dazed and slightly frazzled. She wears a hospital gown. I wonder what time it could be. Minutes become hours, which become days and weeks and creep into months and years. It seems that I spent all my days waiting. Enter doctor.
Good morning, madam. How are you today?
I believe my husband is coming today. I can't wait to see him.
Is he now? I didn't notice any visitors scheduled. Perhaps it was an error. Well, time for your medication, dear.
Thank you, doctor. I'm in a bit of pain today. I feel as though I am slipping away.
Hopefully, this will help. Here's some water. That's it. Good. I'll be in again this evening. Take care, madam.
Exit doctor. What an odd man. How could he forget the day that my husband finally comes?
Knock, knock.
Barely containing her excitement. This seems to be an old game. Who's there?
Lettuce.
Let us who?
Let us in. It's cold outside.
They laugh. Man enters the room. He walks oddly and a bit stiffly to the chair. Woman stands as they embrace.
My butterfly, how are you today?
Wonderful now that you're here.
I'm sorry, darling, that I haven't come sooner. Just gazing into your eyes takes me far into space, to galaxies unknown.
You sap. I feel the same though. How are you feeling?
I'm tired. I ache. But now a day goes by that I don't think of you. Hopefully, I'll be able to leave the hospital for good, and then I can see you every day.
I can't wait. A beeping sound comes from a device on man's wrist.
Damn, I have to get back so soon. I'm sorry, darling. They have to run more tests. I will come as soon as I can, I promise.
If I must wait, I will. Take care, love.
My butterfly, never lose your wings.
Man exits. Alone again. More tests? I thought he was getting better. I hope it isn't serious. Then again, if it were serious, then surely they wouldn't let him leave. What time is it? I wish there was a clock in the room. I'm too tired to go and look. This new medication makes me feel awful. Enter doctor.
Good evening, madam. How are you feeling?
I'm not sure I sit well with this new medication. I feel strange and tired.
Well, hopefully some of that will subside as your body adjusts.
My husband visited today.
Did he? Now.
Yes, he had to go back to the hospital for more tests, but he promised to come whenever he can.
Well, remind him to book an appointment next time. Unscheduled visitors aren't permitted.
Scene 2. Woman's room. She is sitting on her bed and the doctor sits on a chair across from her.
I have a few questions for you. Have you been experiencing any disorientation?
Yes, I feel quite out of sorts, discombobulated.
Okay, we can talk about that after. Have you been feeling any euphoria?
I feel elated whenever my husband can visit, but I suppose that makes sense.
And how often does he visit?
It used to be twice a month, but lately it's been less and less.
I see. That's good. In fact, this is going to be difficult, but I want these visits to cease.
What? Why? I'm only happy when we're together.
It seems to be making you hysterical, and besides, it can't be good for his health.
Hysterical. Don't get me started, or I'll damn show you hysterical.
See, this is what I mean. You're always like this around the times of these visits. I'm going to increase your medication. Maybe once you're more level, we can let him come back.
The doctor holds out 3 pills and a small paper cup filled with water. Woman puts the pills in her mouth and drinks the water. Doctor takes the cup and exits. Woman opens her mouth and takes the pills out from under her tongue. She drops them down the ventilation shaft. I wish to fly amongst the clouds and declare your name, but these fiends try to eat my wings and keep me tame. Scene 3. Woman and man lay together on the bed. Man is significantly paler and thinner. The doctor said you shouldn't be coming to see me.
Ridiculous. I'm your husband, and the doctors let me leave the hospital at their discretion.
Yes, but he says it's interfering with my recovery. I think it's a conspiracy. They had me taking a new medication, and it was like the more often I took it, the less I saw you. But I'm onto their trick. I've been only pretending to take it, and lo, you reappeared.
Yes, love conquers all. Don't be afraid, my butterfly.
I had a dream yesterday. It was raining. I was sitting under the tree in our backyard. You were laying in my arms, gazing up at me. You looked immensely tired but happy. You were speaking to me, and though I could not hear the words, it tore me apart. I woke up feeling awful.
Only a dream, Butterfly. Dreams can't hurt us. I'm sorry, but I must go back to the hospital.
Man gets out of bed. Why? Why must you always leave? Each time I fear you will never return.
Soon we will be together forever.
Man exits. Scene 4. Woman's room. Enter nurse.
Hello, dear. How are you today?
I don't understand why I can't see my husband anymore. Is this how you expect me to get better? Rotting alone in my mind?
Well, dear, the doctor says because of your husband's health, it's too much of an emotional burden for you.
But I'm only happy when I'm with him.
Here, let me get the doctor and he can help explain things.
Nurse exits and returns with doctor. He sits in a chair facing the woman. Tell me, doctor, why are you depriving me of the love of my life?
You have to understand, madam, this is a necessary precaution. It's too much for you right now.
But it doesn't make any sense.
This is going to be hard for you. It always is.
What? What do you mean?
Your husband is dead.
No, he isn't. He was here just 15 minutes ago. Woman looks at the nurse. The nurse looks away. You have to believe me.
I'm sorry, madam. He's been dead for 8 years. He had a brain tumor. The cancer seeped into his bone marrow, and by the time they found it, it was too late. He only ever visited you once. He died later that night. What you are experiencing is what we call psychosis.
Psychosis?
Yes, dear. You think your husband is alive, and you talk with him, but it's all in your mind. That's why you need to keep taking your medication, dear, instead of hiding it. You were doing so well.
Liar. Fiend. Give me back my love. Woman attacks the doctor. The nurse rushes over and pins down the woman, who shrieks. The doctor pulls a syringe and a small vial from his suitcase and injects a solution into the woman. Stop! No! Grotesque! Grotesque! Just let me die! Woman's movements become less erratic, more sluggish. Her eyes close and she goes still. Scene 5. White padded room. Cold light from overhead. A bed stage left. A metal door stage right. Woman sits on the floor in the middle of the room. She is in a straitjacket. She stares straight ahead, rarely blinking. The doctor's voice can be heard outside the door.
I'm afraid a smorgasbord of medications has proven to be ineffective. She doesn't seem to be responding to the electroconvulsive therapy or other treatments. All we can do is keep her here until she passes. I'm afraid there are to be no visits from here on in. We will notify you with updates to her progress.
The metal door creaks open. Doctor enters. He administers an injection into the woman's neck. She doesn't wince. The doctor leaves. The door creaks shut, and the metallic clang of a lock sliding into place rings throughout the room. You are not here, yet you come and go. Memory and imagination have seamlessly flowed together. In this world where there is no difference between night and day, you are the only light left for me in a valley of shadows that I swear are fusing into something even more obscure and haunting. I only know the time based on when they bring my meals. Cold toast. Cold toast. Why is it cold? It's toasted but chills the touch like it's been in the freezer, and it makes a horrid clacking sound when I tap it against the bed frame. Day after day, cold toast until I die. I can't wait. I too shall become a light and slip into the darkness where together we will shine amongst all the souls of the dead, which have mingled in a vortex of questions that the mind cannot comprehend, but the heart can answer.
Wow. That was an intense one.
Thank you. So this is, about it's a commentary, I guess, not really commentary, but it's situated in the world that is pre-deinstitutionalization.
Right.
which didn't occur in Canada until quite recently. You know, the past about 20 years ago is when the last asylum closed in, 12 years ago. Sorry, 2012 is when the last one closed in Canada. And as we can see, you know, she's experiencing psychosis. She's also experiencing grief, worry over the degrading, you know, state of her husband. And ultimately, it is that grief that breaks her. You know, the doctor finally reveals the truth to her, and she can't take it. And so all they can do is keep her there. Sometimes that's the only option with people, you know, who are too unwell. Is, you know, we have convalescence clinics and long-term care homes for these reasons. They're a bit more humane now than it used to be, I think. Depends where you go, probably.
But yeah, you know, you're right. That's it's all too common an end to some people's, you know, situation where they wind up for the rest of their lives, where they're heavily medicated and they're kept in, you know, they're kept in a room or a couple rooms and they're taken care of, but you know, they're largely just, you know, kept heavily sedated.
They're ghosts, right? Hence the title.
Wow, that's wow.
Thank you for reading that with me. That was fun.
That was a lot of fun. We should do more of that. I didn't realize how much fun that would be. You know, we're both such good readers, so it flows really well. Yeah, I had fun doing it. So thank you for asking me to do that. And yeah, the cold toast. That was such a profound, scary image, you know, just beating the this is my life till I die.
So pretty much every time I've been in psychiatric emergency for breakfast, because I have like I've kind of like a weird diet. Like I can't really eat fruit because of condition. I can't eat like eggs really. So they would just bring me like these dinner rolls that clearly were in the freezer, and they quickly zapped them in the microwave. And a lot of the time they would still be cold and hard. And so this is a nod to that.
Wow. Prison food, right?
Yeah. The thought of how, imagine if that became your every meal.
Right. And you know, the loss of a partner is such a profound kind of thing, right? We can all imagine us trying to cling to that. So that would be like a common kind of psychosis, I would imagine. And just the desire for someone to come and protect you and save you, especially the person who you leaned on for that saving. Very, very profound image.
Thank you. So that's all that we wanted to read from the collection. There is one other story in the chapbook. I can talk about the context of it, maybe, or the premise.
Yeah, please do. I want to hear. What's it titled for?
It's titled The Drive. And it's about a couple who are on a drive in the country, and they stop because one of them is starting to feel an onset of their symptoms being exacerbated. You know, it's implied that this character has psychosis as well. And he starts to see his skin rotting. His body just starts rotting. And it's about the horror of it, and for his partner's attempt to bring him back into reality, which they're able to do. And it's based off of a real experience. About 4 years ago now, I had a partner, and I was at her house, and I was looking at my hands, and my skin literally started to rot and fall off of my hands. And it was quite terrifying. I had to call the crisis line and stuff, and they were able to help with some sort of mindfulness techniques and distractions that I could use. But it was very distressing, and so the story was just a retelling of that in a different scene.
That sounds awesome. Wow, though. These stories were so good, Grant. Like, I really want to applaud you on them, because like it's hard I do some writing myself, and something like dialogue to get that natural flow, but also to have it flow in a story is really hard to do. And I noticed that you were able to do that quite well in this, where you kept it tight and concise, and it flowed both as a story and as a natural dialogue. So I really like that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. The play was actually written in 2014, so that's the most recent of the works in the collection. The other ones were all written in about 2013, and the play was actually an adaptation of another play. I can't remember the title of it, but in the scene where she describes a dream that she has, where they're laying in their backyard, and his head is in her lap, and they're speaking. That's the only scene that survives from the original play. I took that conversation they were having and I just turned it into a completely different story.
Wow.
Because I didn't really like the play, but it was an assignment in my dramaturgy class to adapt it into a play. So
Isn't it often the case where you're writing something and then you then all of a sudden and there's an image that's something else attracts you and you get a new idea, and then like the original context is lost and now you're going off in this new direction.
it's fun. It's exciting. I typically write poetry as you know, so to dive into something that's a little bit different was a rewarding challenge. When I first wrote it, I thought this is crap, but I was like, no, I actually really like it a lot, and I think that people will find something within these pages, hopefully. And I've decided that I'm happy with it.
Yeah, I really love it. I hope you write more short fiction in the future and release more of your plays, because I know you wrote more plays. You got more kicking around there.
Yeah, I have another little short one-page, one-scene play that I wrote, and a couple other ones as well. So maybe I'll keep chipping away at them.
I hope you do. So, is there anything you want to leave people with that work?
Yeah, just the reminder that, you know, death is always around the corner, but it doesn't have to control or enslave us. It can inspire us to create, to live, to make new friends, to share new experiences, you know? And yeah, you only die once, but so much can be discovered during that time. And death itself isn't really the end. We just enter a new state of being, right?
That's what I personally feel, for whatever that's worth. Yeah. So, is this one been released yet? Can people purchase this on your website?
Yeah, it's only $5 because it's a little bit shorter. It's about 18 pages, and it's up on my website along with most of my other works right now. And yeah, I have only sold a few copies so far, but that's okay. I only just published it about a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago, so I'm happy that even a couple people have taken an interest, and hopefully it resonates with them.
Right. And besides, we're always just doing this kind of art for the sake of art, and if people support you, then
a lot of these collections, like probably what I'll do with this collection is if it's $5 as a standalone, but if someone, let's say, orders my anthology, which is much more expensive, I'll just include this as like a free add-on,
Beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
But you're also, we were talking today, you have a new release that's coming up, and it's actually a revision of what I think is probably my favorite piece. And I think everyone should go back and watch the episode we did. It's called Sacred Armaments, right?
Yeah. Sacred Armaments, essential for vanquishing psychiatric demons.
Right. I didn't want to say it all. I knew it, but I was like, I want to make sure it's a longer.
Yeah, no problem. I just call it Sacred Armaments for short.
Right, but it's such a fun one. That was one where you were devising your own poetic mythos and creating these magical forms of weapons. And then you were externalizing your mental issue, well, your mental health kind of concerns as demons that you were vanquishing, right? Really fun, and you had like your own saints, your own swords and stuff. Very, very
Yeah.
interesting and powerful magical poetry. I love it.
Thank you so much. So I'm really happy with how it turned out, and it was written during a time. I've been waiting over 2 years to start electroconvulsive therapy. I finally started Monday of this week, and that inspired me to write 13 more poems, which were originally going to be a standalone chapbook called Electroconvulsive Therapy and Sorcery. But I decided that the themes really are connected to sacred armaments. And so I included it as an end piece, and I went back through and revised a lot of the poems to make it flow better.
Amazing. So it's a total of 13 additional poems.
Yes.
That's a good extension. That's almost doubling of the original work.
Yeah, because it's 20 or something poems, I
Yeah.
think, in the original chapbook. So it's a bit meatier now. And I think in a good way. In a good way.
No, for sure. That's awesome. And I know you sent me a few of them and there was some serious deep magic in it. And I really was enjoying it. So I hope everyone who has yet to pick up or check out Sacred Armaments goes and gets the revision, because that'll be worth it. Lots of fun there.
Definitely. And that'll be out. I'm just waiting for my friend to help me format the cover, and then I'll be able to release it in probably a couple weeks or the end of the month.
Perfect. And then we're finally also going to see the release of Methystani, right? Your dream poetry.
Yeah. And that's my magic dream poem that I composed that we talked about a while ago. That'll be out early March, probably.
That was another really fun one. So yeah, I'm excited for all your releases, and of course, you also have your graphic novel on the way.
Yeah. My graphic
So
novel. I'm trying to release that by the end of the year. And one more project that I'm working on is an art book of all of my drawings.
yeah, I forgot you mentioned this a couple times now. That'll be really fun. Are you gonna do it like art book style, like a larger kind of piece, or how do you plan to publish it?
Yeah, it'll probably be most of my all my I tend to print all my chapbooks as 5.5 by 8.5.
Mhm.
So the art book is going to be 7 by 10, so it's a little bit larger, and I might even do a slightly larger format than that. I haven't decided yet. It really comes down to when I resize the images. It's what size proportions I can bring them to without having to crop it or anything.
For sure.
And that's called the Blood of the Soul, and it has about 30 or 40 of my drawings in it, and
Amazing.
I'm very excited to finally put that one out into the world.
When you do that, we'll have to do a talk about it and just go through all your drawings, because that will be a fun one to just peruse and flip through.
Yeah, talk about the themes behind the different images.
Right? Because, I mean, we want I know as an artist, right, everyone wants the individual to bring their own interpretation to the work, but also each work has a personal interpretation, right? So it's fun to have that kind of addition to expand upon with.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's fun. And I know you also have a couple musical projects on the way. Have you guys released your debut album for your new progressive metal band? Or
Not yet. The EP is still in the works. We're waiting on. My dad is providing us with a saxophone solo in one of the songs, but he's just super busy with work right now. So in the next couple of weeks, he's going to sit down and send that to us, and then we'll be able to release the EP. The set release date, or the planned release date, is March 1st.
That's awesome. And I'm trying to remember the band name. It's kind of like some weird disease, so I always forget it. Sorry.
Yeah, it's the isosceles infection,
Oh yeah,
and
that's
the album is called Ick. The debilitating effects of Ichthyopterius multifilius in Osteoichthyes.
that's the part that is even really hard. Okay. Yeah, the
Yeah,
isosceles
just Ick for short.
Yeah, so all of Graham's links are below, and you're always working on new musical projects and whatnot. So I'm sure we'll see more. And also, just want to say, really happy to hear that you're getting electroconvulsive therapy finally, and we um,
Thank you.
sending you all the love, and we hope that you're now firmly on the road to recovery, at least of some kind of normalcy, right? Uh,
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
and we'll be back in a couple days on Saturday to for searching for dragons number 12. We're going to be talking about Edgar Allan Poe, our second Edgar Allan Poe deep dive. We're going to be specifically looking into uh, two poem well one poem and a short story similar to what we did last time. We're going to read Edgar Allan Poe's poem Helen, and then we're going to talk about his short story Morella. And I really think that these two match well with the previous episode because it's like I've been really looking at Poe and trying to understand his utilization of the muse and in talking about this idea of this magical muse. And Helen is a clear allusion in so much of Poe's work and is such a profound character within the Greek canon. And what's wild is I was talking with Ammon the other night, and he showed me this Byzantine scholar from around like the 14th century named John Scalitzes. Really weird name, Scalitzes. It's like pronounced like Skylightsies or spelled Skylightsies. Anyway, he wrote like an entire history of the Byzantine empire. But while going through his works, he makes all these allusions to Medea and to Helen. He equates them as the same character.
That's super cool.
Right. And then I found another passage where it's talking about how at the end of her life, Medea goes to Elysium in the underworld and marries Achilles, and they become king and queen of Elysium. And I think Poe knows all this, right? And he's invoking this kind of monstrous witch feminine in this story of Morella. Morella, I also found this really awesome letter where Poe is talking to a friend of his who was kind of asking him about themes, and he's largely agreeing. And he kind of goes that Morella is really a rewriting and a refinement of the story of Ligeia. And we read Ligeia last time, and remember, it's about this beautiful woman who the narrator is married to, who's this powerful, transcendent kind of genius who he can remember every inch of her physical being and is obsessed with her gaze and her face, but can't recall her family and all this stuff. But then she mysteriously dies, and he, in like this opium kind of fueled trip, winds up going off to this mansion in the depths of England, and he gets married to some other woman that he just kind of despises. And then he decks out this castle room in all of this like gothic imagery with these big blood red drapes and these coffins in the corners and stuff. And then in a drugged out haze, he's like giving wine to his new wife who's dying. She of course immediately starts dying, right? And their bridal chamber turns into like a death chamber. So she's now in this bridal bed that's now a deathbed, dying, and he sees this vision of this ghost pouring like some kind of blood red liquid into the wine. And then when Rowena, his like new wife, drinks the wine, she starts like dying. But then when he starts remembering Ligeia, she starts coming back to life. And then at the end, the more he remembers Ligeia, until finally Ligeia possesses the body and rises, right?
Yeah,
So,
it was a wild story.
wild story, right? So Ligeia remember we talked about was related to the sirens and to the muse and there was all those references to Helen. Well, it's all connecting to Medea as well, and there was also that reference to Ultima Thule. So much craziness going on with Poe, and such a fun character who's really into this kind of monstrous, vampiric, transformative muse, and I love it. And we're going to dig into Morella, which is a refinement of Ligeia. So in this story, I'm not going to spoil it now, but if anyone wants to, I've already done a full reading on the channel. It's a shorter one. It's only like 15 minutes. But in Morella, it's similar, but instead of a new wife, there's a daughter. Morella, when she dies, she has a daughter. Dun, dun, dun. So we're going to talk more about the muse and this ability to die and be reborn, this magic of the will that Poe so loves. And he called this, Poe has a famous quote where he said that the most poetic and beautiful thing to talk about was a beautiful woman dying. Yeah. And you can see that theme is like a constant in a lot of his works. He wrote like 7 or 8 things, and then this specific dying and being reborn, he does this a couple times, so we're going to have some fun. I'm excited. I'm such a Poe nerd now. And then we'll be getting back the following. We got a lot of stuff planned. Hopefully we're all feeling good and moving forward. But the Saturday after that, we're going to talk about your favorite Artaud book. We're going to come back for Artaud Part 2. Since people love the Artaud. Thank you guys all for the support of Searching for Dragons 11. That got some of our highest views yet, and we're just so happy. So we're going to give you 3 parts of Artaud. And Graham, show the book. Which one do you want to talk about for Part 2?
It's called A Sinister Assassin. And it's a collection of Antoine Artaud's last writings when he was living in Ivry-sur-Seine from September 1947 up to his death in March 1948. And it's a wonderful collection. It's my favorite. I have 20 Artaud books, and this is my favorite one. It's Artaud the Sorcerer in full force, and he's like invoking magic and casting these spells, spitting incantations at death, even as he's like dying from cancer, And it's a profound series of works, and I'm really, really excited to dive into it.
We're gonna have so much fun with this one. This is we were showing last time Artaud getting mystical, having his mystical discovery, right? Going to Mexico, going through that initiation, and then going through the asylum and dying and being reborn. So we saw that whole trajectory that leads to this book, where we're going to get Artaud in his full force, as you described him, Artaud the Sorcerer, where now he's full madcap in the best way imaginable. The gloves are off. Artaud is here to flip the poles with what little life he has left. Right?
Exactly. He's described in it has his last 2 interviews in it as well that he gave before the end of his life. And in one of them, he's described as being a man awaiting but adamantly refusing death.
Beautiful. Wow. Yeah. Oh, so make sure you guys tune in for that. So we'll have Part 2 of Poe, Part 2 and 3 of Artaud. Lots of new stuff with Graham and I on there. And maybe some new recordings from us as well. As we do these, we love to read these pieces, and you'll probably get some new poetic recordings too. So stay tuned, everyone. And thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you support Graham. You can go to the links below, Things in My Chest publications, and you can pick up You Only Die Once, which was the short story collection and plays that we read today. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And any final words, Graham?
Just life is filled with so much pain and hardship. It's easy to forget about the good things in life. And so maybe take a time to reflect on what you're thankful for.
Beautiful. Never hurts to be thankful, right? We often talk about shadow work. A part of shadow work too is just recognizing the beauty in life, right? Recognizing, as much as we need to learn to recognize the mistakes we made and learn from them, we need to learn the things we've done correct and celebrate them and celebrate ourselves. And we all have so much that's worthy of celebration. So beautiful words, Graham. Thank you so much. Peace and love, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Till next time.